before we get started, do you guys have, Mike, I know you're looking. You guys are both looking. Hansel, anything?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Any like leads or it's pretty early, so don't feel bad. I'm just curious. We could tailor the talk a little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
The target mostly academic.
Okay.
That was the spoke.
Yeah. Good. So you want to do academics? Do you have a location or open?
Well, I'm planning all of them on the East Coast. That's learning.
In Philadelphia?
Yeah, I was just like, yeah, selectively up and down the East Coast and then Mountain West.
Okay. Okay. So that's good. Hansel, anything narrowed in? Southern California, and then academic, private, whatever kind of. Yeah.
Most of the stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Mike, academics.
Yeah.
EBD.
Yeah.
As long as it puts you in Boston.
No, I mean.
Okay. Andrea, any jobs yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nope. Job for the next 3 years.
Well, yeah, it's true. Yeah. And then, yeah, Bob, feel free to chime in at all during this. What's that? You looking? I feel like I'm better fit to give this talk because I've had to get 2 jobs. Bob's only had to get 1. So, yeah, talk about first probably 30 minutes or so talking about really my take on getting a job. You know, you guys have heard all this stuff from mentors and whatnot over the years, and I'm sure all of that is really helpful. And some of this will be rehashed probably as well. But you know, I've gone through this process twice. It's very frustrating. It's a lot different than everything else you've done, but this is sort of my take. And then we'll talk about just early practice stuff. So yeah, you can see that's how you feel sometimes. Kind of like I said, this is very different than every other job you've had before. It's at first it's like exciting, you know, you're like, oh, I get to look at all these places. Then you realize like, hey, there's nothing posted. How do I find these jobs? And you have to use a skill set that you haven't used for the last your whole life, basically, depending on what you did before medicine. So it can be very frustrating. There's very little formality to it. And there are times where it's very disheartening, not necessarily because you don't get a job, but it's like you send out 40 emails to people and you get 0 replies. And this is the kind of stuff that you're going to run into, and you just have to know ahead of time. That's not abnormal. It's not like a you problem. This just happens sometimes. Anyways, yeah, so this talk is hopefully giving you a little bit of a roadmap, but again, obviously this is really just learning from my own experience, having gone through it a couple times. So this is a stat that like everybody talks about, you know, 50% of orthopedic surgeons change jobs in the first 3 years. It's really easy to just kind of gloss over that stat and be like, oh, okay, if I have to change jobs, then I have to change jobs. It sucks. Like changing jobs sucks. I mean, obviously I'm a lot happier in my current job than I was in my last job. So that side of things is good, but it's a big life stressor. So you really, if possible, you want to try to avoid that. There's a lot of things that kind of come with that people may or may not talk about. So obviously it's very stressful. Like changing jobs is like the number 3 stressor in your life behind like divorce and a death in the family or something like that. And you don't really realize that until you're going through it. You have to restart building a practice again, you know, depending on the situation that you come into. That's also very frustrating because you put a ton of time into like, you know, coddling your little child and getting all your referrals, then you move and you go somewhere else. And even if you're in the same town, a lot of times, a lot of the patients that you see won't follow you and whatnot. It's loss of income, obviously. There's, you know, time that you might not be getting paid. Depending on your your salary and everything like that that's set up in your first job. You may have to repay bonuses and whatnot, signing bonuses, guarantees if you leave early and that sort of thing. Malpractice tails is another thing people don't really talk about. So if you have a job, actually, I mean, in residency, you have to have a malpractice tail, but that's all taken care of. But after your first job, you have to buy a malpractice tail, and it's like tens of thousands of dollars to do. Usually, sometimes your new employer will cover that, but a lot of the times they won't. And then legal issues. I actually ran in, my former boss was threatening some legal action, even though I was like leaving the state and all of this stuff. And these are just, when you leave a job, you piss people off and then they try to get after you. All these things are very depressing. The only reason I'm telling you that is that, don't just say like, oh, I'll just take this job for 2 years and then I'll leave. Like there's a lot more that goes into that. I think there's a couple, when you're picking your job, there's a couple things that you can do like from the get-go. So from starting, now, I kind of lumped this into three main types of practices. So there's academic practices, obviously, that's what we all do. And the majority of people that you trained with were in academics. So you're very kind of honed into what that side of things is. So a couple things within academics, some of them are a little bit more run like a private practice, but essentially, for the most part, you're still employed or part of a large institution. So there's some positives and negatives to that. Obviously, with academics, you get to teach, you get to do research, or you have to teach, you have to do research, depending on how you want to think about that. But that's obviously a big part of it. If your goal is to make a difference in the world, that is going to be your easiest stepping stone is through academics. Couple things that are frustrating with academics. So things move slower, and that's like, in the OR and that sort of thing, but more on like an administrative bureaucratic level. Like if you want to do something, there's a lot of people that have to sign off on that. Second thing is private practice. This is something that like, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was like 70% of orthopedic surgeons were in private practice in like the 90s, and now it's less than 50%. So it's definitely shrinking, and this has kind of come and gone in waves over the years. So we'll kind of see how things go. The positives to private practice. So, the income ceiling is probably highest in private practice. In academics, it's improved, I think, over the last 20 years. And depending on the pay model, it's not bad, but you're not going to make as much as you will in private practice, again, depending on the situation. So in private practice, you can build whatever you want, right? You can hire whoever you want. You can work only in a surgery center. You can work, if you don't like that surgery center, you can leave and go somewhere else. So you can really tailor your practice to be as efficient and, to have it be whatever you want it to be. Some of the downsides of private practice. So you don't really learn a lot of the kind of business side of things, and it really is running a business. I'm not going to go into that too much in this talk. The other thing is like, it is extremely difficult to stay an academic surgeon in a private practice. There are people that do it, but it's the vast majority of people. And there's a lot of things that go into that: time, funding, resources. You can't, if you're hiring a research coordinator or whoever, like you have to pay for all that stuff out of your own pocket. So some of that stuff's difficult. The last kind of broad group is employment. And you can maybe say that academics is under that too, but this is more like employed by a hospital or a hospital system or large group. I put out here Kaiser and Intermountain, just because these kind of resonate with people. The plus side to this is it's probably closer to that 9-to-5 sort of job. It's still not. All these things, there's a lot of different intermixings here. The downside is you really have no autonomy. It depends a little bit on the situation, but you lose a lot of that. And, you're kind of being dictated by people that don't really know much about orthopedics and that sort of thing. So there's some positives and negatives for sure. Some people think this is like a safe option, and I actually completely disagree, because people that are making decisions of whether you have a job or not are not really other orthopedic surgeons. They're hospital admins and stuff. So, you know, if you're busy and doing well, you're probably safe wherever you are, but just something to keep in mind again. All right, so just to kind of go into the private practice side of things, these are sports medicine procedures from 2000 to 2020. This is our reimbursement. So like physician fees, it's dropped like 40% over the last 20 years, 30 years. And you can imagine at that same time, cost of living and inflation has gone up, right? This is super depressing. And, you know, for certain scenarios, if you're like RVU based and whatnot, it may not matter as much. But, you know, some of this comes down to how you get paid. Typically in private practice, you get paid based on your collections. So you do a surgery, traditionally you do surgery, and then you collect a physician fee for that procedure, and then that's it. That physician fee continues to decline. Every year it goes down. As you can imagine, that fee is dependent on if you're a private payer or Medicare or Medicaid, that sort of thing. I put in here the revenue cycle. So this is like when you do a case, there's like 18 steps until you actually get paid for that case. So you need to have a good billing team to take care of that. So and I'll kind of come back to this in a second. And then the other way to get paid is RVUs. This is more of an employment thing where whatever you're doing, that entity is collecting all of their money and then they're paying you based on the amount of RV work value or relative value, work relative value units. And there's a certain dollar amount per RVU and that sort of thing. The reason I kind of talk about that stuff is in private practice, this is my 2 cents. I would be very hesitant to join a small private practice. This is what I did. I joined like a 5-person group, or I guess I was the 5th person. And if you have a small private practice, your income streams are limited to your physician fees, and then maybe you can like join in a surgery center and that sort of thing. But if you're not in a larger group, you're not going to be building a surgery center. You're not going to be owning a physical therapy practice, owning an MRI machine, that sort of thing. And the reason I say this is if you're in a small group and you're just dependent on your physician fees, and you know every employee that you have, especially since COVID started, like the cost of those employees keeps going up. It's really, really difficult to make it work in a small private practice group. You know, if you have like 3 or 4 like-minded people that are killing it, then you can still do it. But I would just be very hesitant about this moving forward. And kind of tying into that, larger private practice groups, they really, over the last like probably 15 years, 20 years, have stayed afloat by diversifying their portfolio, diversifying their income stream, right? So big one is surgery centers. And there's one you can like buy into a surgery center and own some shares in it, and you could do okay with that. But it's really they build their own surgery center and then they get all the facility fees in addition to the physician fees. And that's where, so if you do like a total knee in a surgery center, you get like 15 to 20 grand, even though the physician fee is like 1,200 or something like that. So you kind of do that. And then they're buying PT groups, they're buying MRI machines, they have their own pharmacies, sometimes their own DME and that sort of thing. So that's one way to diversify. And that's how they've stayed afloat. The other thing is that they've really upped the use of mid-levels, so like PAs and NPs, running their non-operative clinics, assisting in the OR. And, you know, in a well-run private practice, a PA, you can pay them $120,000, benefits, whatever, maybe $150,000. They can generate like $400,000 of revenue if they're utilized really well. That means running their own clinics, assisting in cases that actually will reimburse them. And so the only reason I say that is large groups have the ability to do that. Smaller groups are losing that ability to do that, and it's difficult. So just things to consider moving forward. I also want to talk about private equity because I hate private equity real quick. This is like the ideal. So this is some quote, private equity firms aren't necessarily evil by definition. Many stories of successful turnarounds. basically stripping businesses and combining them. So in the ideal situation in orthopedics, this has become a bigger thing. So private equity, basically, it's a group of people with a ton of money. They see that orthopedic surgery groups make a lot of money. They want to buy them and kind of reshape them and then resell them in 5 years and make money off that. So you need to have like 20% growth per year for that to work. The ideal scenario is a private equity firm comes in, they buy a portion of a practice, they invest a lot of money into it, and then your marketing is improved. They kind of hone down your billing and change, instead of having the calls come into the office, they get a call center. So they kind of cut some of the costs. But they also streamline some things, and then they infuse a lot of money into it to help improve your brand and all that kind of stuff. And then your practice grows from there. This is in reality what it's like right now for younger surgeons. And I have not experienced this, but a couple of my colleagues have, and it's not good right now. So like what in reality is happening is these private equity groups, they come in, they talk to all of the senior partners, and they're like, hey, we want to buy 20% or 51% or whatever of your practice. We're going to pay you $8 million each, or $6 million each. Like seriously, like huge sums of money. And to buy off this part of your practice. When you're a junior partner, especially in your guys' position, just starting out, you don't own any of the practice. You don't get any of that. And then essentially you're still collecting the same amount of money, and a certain portion of that is going to private equity, and they're trying to cut costs at the same time. So it's not a good situation for you guys. If you can, I would avoid this. The other side of this is their end goal is to resell your company in 5 years. So in 5 more years, you're talking about owning even less of the private practice, and they're trying to resell, and groups that have tried to do that have been unsuccessful so far. So it's just maybe it'll all work out. I would just be very hesitant when you're looking at jobs if you see that. Yeah.
Yes, ancillary. For a long period of time, that can actually be substantial bonus. So, being in a private practice where you have the ability to get revenue from all the ancillary products, slings, physical therapy, surgical center. Most oftentimes, surgeons that are doing that make between 2 to 3 times the amount of money that to bring practice. So say they can make $700,000. Most oftentimes when they can go services, they make between 1 and 2 million on top of it. So it's a substantial amount of money. If you get into a tight situation, it's a large enough group where they can have power and money to be able to actually go to the surgical center or anything. And you actually treat it at the right time, because a lot of times many of these places have already been developed that and make process of that. You come in and you try to get shares of that if you can. It takes time, and it's already the equity that's already been created. So that's the value of that is much higher, but the cost of you is much higher. So I would say 20 years ago, that was the ultimate model to actually get into the there's but then now 20 years later, the same surgeons that were actually able to develop or capitalize on the ones that are actually making most money on private equity. Yes, they were the ones that actually developed that, built the practice, they're selling the practice $10 each. And do I think it really hurts the surgeon that's coming out that it's just starting and getting into a practice? I feel like it's okay, that I think it is what it is. We know what it is. So the reality is, that if you like it, fine. There are benefits if you dig in that, um, you know, probably things will change that it's up in the Jones, but it's going to slow back. But this is probably not going to be viable. Um, but at least your space value goes to what you're going to get when you actually try to practice. People that first do most of the surgeons that have been 3, 6, 7, 8 years, but they're just starting to actually get into a position that they don't want to do those practices. And then they get bought up by private equity, which was not something that to be able to manage which kind of practice. And they're as opposed to their partner story. Higher, so I will say academics though is not necessarily also you know, I'm going to see that with regards to that. You can make a lot of money from academics that you can correctly. But I was having a majority of people that are being academics to come. And so I can tell you not too long ago, so in my life, she got hired back in Brian when I was the president, it's just 20 years ago. Her salary was $90,000 for the surgery. And she was looking $130 a week. Obviously, that's her. Well, there's this time in the operating, so that's the thing, was everything that we in the hospital was basically she was the appointment of even more than the resident, and so staffing, et cetera, and so that's changed obviously, but I would tell you average salaries in the academic student, it's probably somewhere between $600,000 a year. We're lucky here because in this department, it is very different than 90% of academic departments where it is, we were, it's like, it's basically paid to make a bunch of work. So this is a not pure, it is a collection-based model for half of our salary that we're having. So it's probably based on the average department, so somewhere the balances out to people in particular Medicare, and then the Stevie allocating which takes care of the bullets that have insurance that are probably cost of the shield. So it's not really fair to the surgeons and the practice that taking care of people with Medicare. So what it is, it's balanced out. So how our salaries are based on the average of the department. You know, it's, you know, like I said, it's so important. If you're going to make money, you don't want to take 2 weeks vacation and make $0. Take 3 weeks vacation and make $0. Or cases you do, and then and there's a balance that because then you have to figure out how many specifically, at least in a department or division or practice where you have some fixed salary, they have to put a top out. Then you have a regulator with regards to how much you want to do, how much you know. And it's all this stuff goes into the charge to the rest of the world. Inside of 10 cases, it could be 15 cases, 20 cases, all of that takes away from what we're trying to spend maybe in other ways. And so the other thing that you understand your own personality versus who you are is that are you need to be the drug addict that continues to go back to the source of getting your drugs because you see it as another case. And then you just keep going. You also have to be wise about what this is. Even though we are in that environment, it's also lots of this is not okay. We're like angry. This is the university and because of that, every case that I do, someone else doesn't do. So even though regarding this model, that you have to be coming to your partners and advice to create this a lot of friction this way. You have to also understand the larger practice like this that you have to be not just for there has to be some feeling of some greater to not just the residents or fellows, but also the department of your fellow colleagues. And so if that's not kind of part of who you are, then leading this kind of always the really bad decisions and the life is going to be gone. The only flip side of that is the average of, let's say, running from an academic standpoint, it's in that kind of probably anywhere to the 6 or 7 range of ability. So there was the possibility of the ball academic runs. There were some that probably fall out of it. I know there are others that are kind of unrated that are too much in the 21,000.
Yeah.
And they do different levels for 1,000. We're not going to get ancillary income. It's very rare for people to get that money out of the surgical center or money out of a slings or physical therapy. So a lot of that is career practice, which just gets pushed back into the years. So how it sees it's not a direct compensation. It's not like you will get $5 a year. What happens is usually with the public gets more resources for that if you need to be able to expand the programs that you'd like to expand.
Amazing, yeah.
Right. I mean, exactly, making it right as a surgeon. Or you might start a fellowship, or you need to start a research program, whatever it is that money gets pushed back into to the department, and that isn't really seen as a dollars to the pocket. That said, I will be honest, industry is easier to actually get funded.
Yeah.
So that's the only upside is that industry used to be 30 years ago, there's high volume surgeons and other figured out. If you get a lot of cases and you get the data, they would actually get you off the work. Now it's totally different. Every company doesn't just want to die because 1,000 cases, they actually are their team to be developing product. They want someone that is speaking, it's publishing, that knows the product, that can develop these things. When you just have exposure to residents and fellows, so they see that as 10x, 30x, just doing policy that they're using. And that can be substantial sum of money. You stop with your salary. What you actually,
Unless you're one of like 5 Arthrex guys that makes $20 million.
but you also have to understand that like, from a royalty standpoint, even from a, you can, I would say for the average academic, like a surgeon from the industry, if you kind of do what you want to do, you can make it $50,000 a year just based on consulting and speaking and whatnot. To make a lot of money, you can just little down and thinking that it's not easy to make, a lot of way on double or triple your salaries. These things to come out for things like that. And you learn those things. So there is areas of this, maybe that business, there's various things where unlike private practice where there's probably a much easier way to make things that are claims and physical therapy, etc. But if you don't have all the benefits and it's really interesting.
Yeah. So a couple things, as you're looking for a job, if you haven't done this already, actually Google yourself, see what pops up, make sure there's nothing weird that you can address. Social media stuff, just be smart about it. Look at your profiles, make sure you don't have anything weird that's public. So these are some more of the nuts and bolts here. So a lot of this stuff you guys have probably heard of, but there are places that jobs are posted, right? And then there's the other like 50% of jobs that aren't really posted. So where to look for jobs posted, I would start with the Academy Career Center. There's a bunch of different resources on there. Some of it's helpful, some of it's not so helpful. But through that, they've got this link over to Health eCareers. And probably the majority of like academic jobs and hospital employed jobs are posted here. So if you go through Academy, you log in, then you go to Career Center, you'll find this. And you can change your search. So for example, right now, there are 4 shoulder elbow jobs in the country that are posted on here. And one of them's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. There's 41 sports medicine jobs. But if you look through these, at least it's, and like Kaiser jobs will be posted here, all that kind of stuff. So somewhere to start. Sometimes through your subspecialty websites, there will be postings as well. As you can see on the shoulder elbow ASES website, there are no job postings. This is pretty typical from the shoulder elbow side of things. I don't know much about ANA or the OSSM. Maybe they have more opportunities there, but I would look through your societies as well. Then, individual like hospital systems, especially if you're looking regionally, I would definitely look at the different hospital systems in the area. If you're thinking about going that route, especially, Hansel, if you're looking like Southern California, know the hospital systems that are down there, look on their websites, reach out to a recruiter through those hospitals, because a lot of times they'll be posting jobs on their own. Usually those are also posted in that Healthy Careers. These are some other websites. They generally kind of match what the rest of them are showing. People that are posting a job, they're going to get posted to a lot of these different websites. And I can send this to you guys too, if you want to. But I would at least, when you're looking, take a look through all these, because maybe there's something on there that's not on one of the other websites. So where are jobs not posted? This is probably the bigger discussion here. And I'm sure you've talked to people on how to find jobs, and they'll say one thing or another. I would say out of private practice jobs, at least half of the jobs are not posted online anywhere. So you got to network for this, right? And this is something that we're notoriously bad at doing, like doctors, orthopedic surgeons, whatever. Yeah, we're friendly people, but like as far as networking stuff, we never really had to do this before. So it's important. And there's a couple ways to do that. Introduce yourself to people at meetings. If you're like, hey, I know this guy works in Florida, just go up and talk to him, like, or her. It's like, it feels very awkward to do that, but everybody knows what you're doing, and you just say like, hey, I'm blah blah blah. I do my fellowship here. I really want a job in this area. Any ideas if you guys have openings? You just got to kind of throw yourself out there. Do that at meetings. Leverage your mentors. You use your faculty here. Use your faculty from residency. Anybody that you really know. Just like find them. Say like, hey, I'm looking for a job here. And you could be you don't have to be secretive about it. Everybody knows that you're going through this kind of thing. And then you kind of become the guy on the top right, where it's like you're just tracking people down and you're just like starting to bug people. And this is how I ended up doing it. So how I was doing this is when I was first looking for a job, I was looking in basically 2 locations, and I went through the Academy website, found like practices and individuals that were working in those areas, called their offices, sent emails to them. You can find everybody's email through the Academy if they're a member. I would Google practices literally on Google Maps, and I would look up orthopedic surgery and just find all the practices there and just start calling every office and ask for their practice manager or one of the doctors there. So I would kind of do it both ways. I would call them, and then I would send an email to somebody that was doing like shoulder there, or the head of the practice or whatever, something like that. But I would start there. That's actually how I found my first job, which maybe this is bad news because I didn't really last there. But sometimes there's people that are like, yeah, we're going to be looking in a couple months, but we haven't posted anything right now. And then you can kind of get in. But if you're desperate, that's a good way to go. But email them. When you email them, tell them what you're looking for, be succinct, send a cover letter, send a CV. Because then they've got it. They can forward it on to their practice manager or something like that. And I'll talk more about that in a second.
So I'll say
Yeah.
about this is the best way to go. It's why it is because all the jobs that are posted, the motivation that people to why the job is actually posted is marketing and is not marketing. So there's a reason why the place posts a job. Now it could be the perfect situation that it fits all your needs. The place is right. The partners are wonderful. The pay is excellent. Everything is just perfectly aligned with what you want. But 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. They are posting a job because they is there's a problem, when there's an issue, where there's something that needs to be addressed in practice. It might be that they lost two surgeons, and now that they're just swamped with work, and but there's a reason why they lost their surgeons. And so then you're coming into a practice that very well might be not in the perfect, the best mindset of, you know, what you would hope for. It's a great position. It's where you want it to be. You're happy because of that. But then you walk into a practice that's got shitty partners because that's the reason why those two people left the last partner surgery. It could be that there's they opened some office in some place of town, and that office needs to be filled with surgeons to be able to actually populate that office. And then you find out more and more about it, and it's like they don't have staff, they don't have the they don't have OR space, they don't have the things that should actually think that are probably it would be great. And then since it's not as good as well, then what would be a really interesting study is the number of jobs that are taking really to work at surgeons, that they took their job based upon a posting of this job and the percentage of time by which they actually on their own that job. And I would tell you it's probably 50%. I know countless people that have done that. And so where I found people that are class that is that it's like grassroots. It's like they will which is the fellowship director. They will do what they just said, is that if you know that there's a place that should not be, there's a reason why we want to be there, and you make it happen. So you call practices. For me, that's what I did. I mean, there was no people, to be able to find jobs. I basically sent letters to the chairman of orthopedic departments. And that's how I kind of did the work. And I got responses from 4 cases. And one of them was Dr. John, who was the chairman for Dr. Salzman. And he emailed me back and said, hey, I'm not going to be the chairman next year, but the risk going to be a new chairman, and then he wants to hire someone. That's kind of how I got here. So I talked with him, et cetera. But a lot of it was just growing things that are on. And so it was building things were really fine. But you have to figure out what you want with the practice. Meaning that that's something that you're going to do, great. And the environment is very good, right, for somebody to do it. And so I would just be I would be a little leery of just looking on the list for the jobs that are open and then kind of going out. And again, this is my own experience, but also the knowing the fellows for the past 20 years. They've gone through trying to find jobs. Half the time, you kind of go to interviews and go talk to people like, yeah, this doesn't and the ones that actually have done the best, I think, works to very happiness is they've done what they've set everything up before. They've done the job where they've created a position almost themselves in the process that they're exceptionally happy. So it's just something to think about, that it's not all versus the jobs, that it's there's usually some ulterior motive of why someone is actually posting a job. It might be fine, and you might say, that's okay, I'm all right, I can deal with that with all the other stuff that comes along with it. But it's usually not, there's a posting and it's great pay, it's in a great area, I got great partners, I'm gonna, it doesn't work that way. So
Yeah. Kind of along with that, recruiters, you guys get a ton of recruiters that start reaching out to you. I don't think they're very helpful in general. There's kind of two types. There's like somebody that's like, hey, I'm going to help you find a job somewhere. And their resources essentially are what are getting posted online. And I haven't heard of many great situations with that. There's also recruiters within like a system. So like for Hansel, if you're like, hey, I want to be I'm interested in this hospital in Southern California. You call the hospital and you say like, hey, do you guys have like a marketing person or recruiter? I'm interested in a job here. And that person does like recruiting and marketing for the hospital or the hospital system. They'll know all the private groups in the area. So that's a good resource. That's a little bit different than like most recruiters though. I'm gonna go through it.
The thing is, you want your job, you want someone to. So the place where you are going, you want, again, it gets back to why they're hiring someone. So if they are hiring someone to fill some role, and that person, if like some, whatever role it's, like I said, like they open up some random next, and like they need a lot of that. The person that is kind of called their partner is involved with it. Like, if the mindset is, well, they're filling that role, filling this clinic, I could care less about whether that person's successful, or not successful, or whether they're a good person, or a bad person, or they're happy or not happy. But they're doing, like, it's off my list, like that role is filled. That's not a good situation. You want someone, you want a practice where you for one person, or the other people completely engaged and they were a successful person. And that will lead to happiness. You will take less money initially, because you know that in the long run, a happier surgeon, better surgeon. And you know, if you look at the longer people that are really successful, if it makes them shorter surgeon, but see what I know. If you ask them why they are where they are, the reason why they are is because someone took an interest in them specifically and wanted to give them to play with the better doctor or surgeon, make them a part of, you know, they will. It's not checking the box.
Yeah.
Think about that when you interview, when you're talking. And you'll find people that are out there that are just, they might not know it. That's the other thing. So they, like if you approach a practice and there might be someone that is totally engaged in wanting to actually hire somebody. You just haven't done for either space or energy. And you're gonna have to, there's gonna be some ability for me to determine the social intelligence of that person that actually is hiring it. Because that is probably as important as you're on the person level of social intelligence, like that wanting to hire you. So we need your bosses and what how engaged they are with the development of the person. Person is a practice in the career is just more impressive as how engaged you are to be a good person in the practice that you're actually trusting.
Yeah. We're kind of out of time here. I'm just going to go through a couple things real quick. So interview, you guys know how to interview. Echo exactly what Bob said. Just know the job, research the job ahead of time, figure out the reason that they're trying to hire somebody. If somebody's left, call them. Also, if you can, have one of your mentors call ahead of time for you. Same as like fellowship interviews and whatnot. It's just helpful. I mentioned this before, CV cover letter. You know, the cover letter I think is important. Some people don't do it. They just rely on the CV, but the cover letter is a way to like highlight your top 2 or 3 things. Keep it succinct. I can send you ones that I've used previously. I'll go through this pretty. What's that? Yeah. I think that people will look at the cover letter more, they'll kind of glance through your CV, but the cover letter really, you can do it in bullet points, like a little paragraph in bullet points. That's how I did it. Like I said, I'm happy to send that to you guys. So building a practice, I'll kind of go through this pretty quickly here. And we can talk more about this as the year goes on. But you want to build a practice quickly, right? But you want to build the right practice efficiently is really what you should do. And that's done by a lot of different ways. And you hear all these things here and there, you know, the 3 A's, ability, availability, affability, like 80% of this is probably availability, I'll tell you, at least in the first couple of years. Nobody cares about your ability and patients don't understand your ability. I mean, as you start to grow further on, that matters, but like it's availability and then it's probably affability and then it's ability. Number one, like this is in, you don't really, realize this until you start practicing, but like the number one thing that you can do to build your practice is just take really good care of people. Like do the right surgery on them. Spend time with them in clinic. When you have 5 people in your clinic for a day, spend like an hour with your patient, and it's hard to do that sometimes, but like that person becomes your marketing tool. And medicine, yes, people use Google and look at websites and whatnot, but the majority of medicine is still word of mouth. And maybe that'll start to change over time, but like if you are known as a guy that takes good care of people, people will sing your praises for you. And you can see, like, if you look through the divisions here, people have like 5 stars out of 5 because people are happy, and that's why people keep coming back. And that's why everybody's busier than they can handle. Develop your niche. So you guys are doing fellowships, know what you want to be doing long term. And this is important for when you go talk to people, but you say, like, if I'm a general practitioner and or I'm like a general orthopedist or whatever, and I've got somebody that's like a younger person with hip pain, I need to send them to a hip person. And then you go and meet them like, hey, I do hip scopes, like then it's easy for them to develop that relationship with you. Early on, I would say yes to everything that you feel comfortable doing, because you're going to change that over time, and you're not going to like expand your practice over time. You're just going to whittle it down a little bit. For example, this is my case, or part of my case log for the first like year and a half I was in practice. I'm shoulder elbow surgeon, and I tell everybody I'm a shoulder elbow surgeon. About half of my practice was shoulder elbow. The other half was like carpal tunnels, ankle scopes. I mean, I did like an EHL tendon repair, like anything I could, because I felt like I could do it. I did a bunch of total hips, anterior total hips. That was usually for fracture, but anyways, you can do that stuff early on. That's fine. You don't feel like you can't do that because that's not in your niche. I think this is, yeah.
Rare in a completely academic situation, salary model is usually fear happens to like, and so you need to be able to see that and also manage it and not want to gender partners to be able to want to be to practice and not keep away from them, even if it is like you're all getting paid the same amount of money. Like they say, well, I've done surgeries forever, and the last thing I want is harder stuff because some younger guys come in and taking some easier stuff, and that makes my life harder. So there's always kind of these conflicting things, and so my recommendation is to not is to recognize that and then figure out what practice means that other people have an interest in the time, and then at the same time, don't restrict yourself to what this thing, and don't restrict yourself. And be willing to also see the stuff that other people are seeing, and you'll be able to look at practice the way that you want over time.
Yeah.
But to come in and say, well, I'm going to be a sports guy, and I'm going to be doing a third hip scope, a third knee surgery, a third shoulder surgery, and I don't care. I'm on doing my way in. That's what I'm doing, because that's the practice that I absolutely want, like 0. Or probably not going to create that pleasant environment with you or with this other surgeons around. If you say, I'm going to come in and I want to do, I don't know, whatever, say that Dan wasn't here, but say it was like pediatric hip scopes, and like what's part of the practice doesn't have that. Then you're adding something, learning something. You don't really kind of marginalize other people that are in the practice, and then you can build all those other things depending on what your levels of interest are. But I would focus on the parts that you can build with them. The other parts just kind of build it. And that's when I came here, It's just Dr. Brooks and Dr. Brooks. I sat down with Dr. Brooks and he said, it's great, but never know what's going to be basically just want to put you in. That was my opinion. And there's that would drive Robert. He's kind of his tongue in cheek a little bit. There's also a little bit of hesitation. And Pat is the same way he is now. 20 years ago, he was the same way, where he made the set like 50 years. And so when I came here, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try to do everything that those guys do. So I was like, I'll be affected, whatever, lawn apart, whatever, you know, total hurts, total shoulders, total elbows, instability that is just like, you know, chronic block dislocation for 8 months that has no people head or whatever it is. People that are being needed on stretchers, you know, all the stuff that no one else wants to actually do. And then what then happened for actually the first 12 months is that Dr. Brooks, who was in the clinic, had multiple patients that were challenging. And he saw me doing all this kind of, you know, basic surgeries. And he's like, hey, do you mind scrolling into my cases with me from this cases that I have this patient? And it's not like he wanted to totally feel bad, don't think he's even my clinic. So, hey, they want to scrub it out this patient. So I'm sure. So I scrubbed in with Dr. Brooks on like probably 4 or 5 of his cases in the first 18 months that I was there. And then over the next 6 to 7 years, he was struggling on some of my cases. So I would ask him, hey, I got this thing. What do you think? Sure. I'll that's in my clinic. Sure. And so even though the first it kind of was how that would eventually send you a case, the reality is that you can think wisely about how to do things, and that you're like, well, screw him. I'm going to build my stuff, and I'm going to just, you know, get in space of, you know, show him that I want to do, you know, every whatever, you know, to rotate once and the rotator about to performance down the road to try to do that. That's not the strategy that you want to do, because in the end, it always going to be was become effective. So you want to figure out a way to be able to engage the person that might not be able to engage. And I'll be honest, but because of that, I'm a much better surgeon. So develop that relationship with him for 20 years. And I think I think he does feel the same way that is that I'm talking about a lot of stuff over the years as well. And it's a great relationship. So that is on. You could have been on at the start. You've been around 20 years. And this was Charlie coming irons in the so he wasn't necessarily interested in himself. So if you get into that situation, you kind of be wise about it, and you can make it work for yourself. Like you don't